Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dynasty Gambit, part of the Going for Two live network. So, again, please subscribe to us on YouTube, also on Twitch and on Facebook video. You can comment from all those sources. You can watch us on Twitter, but if you are watching the Twitter videos and you have the ability to comment, we cannot see your comments. So, if you do want to interact with us, we advise going over to the Going for Two live YouTube page. Again, subscribe, like the video. If you're rewatching this, appreciate if you comment below the video as well. And just a few comments. Really appreciate both my guests today joining no co-hosts. So still a Dynasty Gambit trio with a couple of new, well, not so new faces. Actually, both were here last week and I wasn't, so I'm the new face. But I guess as always on the Dynasty Gambit guest, the big Pulowski, the big guest, Zach. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm bouncing around all the different hosts of the show, one at a time. Maybe next week we'll get Vandy in here as the main host. No. I'm glad to be here though. I'm excited to talk about some fantasy football trades. It's definitely that time of year where I'm really looking at either considering where my team is positioned and if I can make a extra little move to help take myself over the top before the season starts. So I'm ready to go.
And joining the Gambit for a second consecutive week, Gator J. So swimming through those waters to find your way back on the Gambit. That was a bad Gator joke. I'm sorry, but how you doing?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. Hope everybody else is doing good out there. I'm ready. I'm ready to look at some of these trades and see what we can come up with to help some of these folks out and hopefully help myself out every now and again.
Yeah, we're always trying to help each other as much as the viewers and listeners. But of course, again, any questions, feel free to ask us. But I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is dynasty trades. And I think before we get into some specific trades, I think that training camps are happening and underway. So is there any training camp news or tidbits that we want to, as dynasty managers, take advantage of in the sense and use in order to create trades or create trade opportunities? So as a good host, I'll let the guest start up first, but or start up. I'm thinking dynasty already, right? But Zach, why don't you lead us off? Any training camp notes of which you want to share?
A lot of wide receiver stock up and down. It depends on who I'm negotiating with. I can usually leverage, kind of reports out of camp. Some people like myself, you try not to get too optimistic or pessimistic on news from just, a wide receiver looking really good or a guy looking questionable. It's tough. It's tough sometimes because you might have a wide receiver that was a 6th round pick lining up against the 3rd string cornerbacks, and he's lighting it up, but he's also not getting first team reps. And so some of it, I'm trying to balance out who I'm working with, but I guess names that come to mind: Alan Lazard. I know we're hearing big things there. Romeo Dubs for Green Bay as well. The big news with Dallas, with James Washington being out for a little while. There's definitely and also KJ Hamler, but I don't know, he scares me more. He's injury prone. But usually I'm mainly paying attention to injuries. Our guy's out for a big chunk. Is that creating opportunity elsewhere? And should I be in pursuit of getting that guy on my team?
Well, I think with Hamler specifically, it's not even that he's injury prone. He hasn't really played enough games to even get that distinction, I would think. But it's the fact that he's recovering from an injury right now. Like he is still maybe not quite to 100%. So that is the kind of the red flags. It's, if a player has had an injury history, but they are currently healthy, they've currently fully recovered from any previous injuries, I wouldn't necessarily ding them. But yeah, I think the
Yeah,
fact that because that ACL tear happened in the preseason in
I
training camp, like
believe so. I
Yeah,
you're
believe so.
basically at 12 months removed right now. So maybe could expect him to get back to 100% during the season as long as there are no reoccurring instances. But yeah, maybe for
He,
right now, it's someone to pay it more attention to than to
he
rise up.
scares he scares me though, because he's the type of player that I want to be excited about more opportunity with Tim Patrick going down for the year. But I've always been nervous about if KJ can stay healthy. So I'm like, well, now I'm just looking at, Montreal Washington or someone else to maybe get more opportunity. Or just
don't you?
makes me view Judy and
Yeah, the
Sutton
rookie tight
higher.
end there, right, Jay?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm looking at some of these wide receivers, and then of course like you're talking about the injuries the running backs coming back from injuries, the ETNs, the Akers. Akers came back early, didn't do very much in the playoffs. But, you got ETN coming back, even though he's not playing tonight. That's going to be one I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch what he's, Robinson coming back behind him, that sort of thing. So what are these guys going to do, and how are they going to produce in order to build the capital that they need to have? So I'm ready to look at them.
Talking a few running backs, I actually have a running back question here. Jamie's asking us, in a dynasty startup, rank Rachaad White, Kenneth Gainwell, Alexander Mattison. Either of you want to give it a shot first?
Yeah, I'd go just off of what we have already seen. I'd take Mattison first because we know what he can produce. I love Rachaad White, being a Tampa fan. I think he's going to be all right. But I think Gainwell is going to be great too. So, man, ranking them, I'd probably have to. That's going to be hard. I would take Mattison, Rachaad White, Gainwell in that order.
I'll flip flop with the Rachaad White and Madison. So I'll put Rachaad White first, then Madison, and then Gainwell. But Gainwell scares me. There's some big weeks, but there's other weeks where he's completely neglected. I don't trust the consistency with Philly. I feel like they find a UDFA in week 7 that's suddenly getting 20 snaps that week, and he's producing. So I never really trusted there. Obviously, Madison's more dependent on Dalvin. And I guess for me with Madison, I'm actually, watching that third string battle a lot in Minnesota because I know Madison had an apparent injury in camp the other day, so did Cook. And this is just like a one-day thing, but suddenly that isn't it Kenny Ngwangu or something? Is that
Nwangwu, yeah, they drafted
Yeah.
him last year, I believe, in the 4th or 5th round.
And I'm watching him, seeing like, is that a guy worth stashing? If Dalvin Cook's been hurt from time to time, if Madison goes down as well, that's not a guy, or that's a guy that might be worth an end of bench slot.
Yeah,
Now,
those injuries happened in back-to-back plays, if I'm not mistaken, too, because Dalvin Cook hurt his hand, and like the very next play, Madison hurt his finger. So, like you said, Zach, they were minor injuries, but it was still something. It was enough to put out there.
so I think it's funny, Jamie, the order you put them in is actually how I would rank them. I would put Madison last, and it's funny because it's almost for the same reason that Jay initially said. We know what he is, but we also know that his role, as actually Zach mentioned, is entirely dependent on Dalvin Cook. He doesn't really have standalone value. If Cook's in the game, Madison's not getting you much, and he's basically giving you a 0 on your lineup every week. Now, Rachaad White, we really don't know what the usage is going to be as a rookie, but with Gainwell, it seems like the Eagles are really key on rotating the running backs. And I know a lot of the touchdowns last year went to Boston Scott, but I feel this year could just as easily just be a 3-way split for the touchdowns between Sanders, Gainwell, and Boston Scott. Of course, I think Hurts is going to monopolize most of that, but the idea is that you can maybe pick your weeks better with Gainwell. And I think Rachaad White, I think the hope there is he carves out a pass catching role, which gives him probably the safest floor out of this group. And I think the fact that he's about to be a rookie, so a lot more leeway, like Madison right at the end of his rookie contract, and really hasn't got much usage yet. And this is normally a time where we kind of see running backs start to decline. Now, maybe because he's had so few touches, he doesn't decline as quickly, but I also wonder if we've wasted the prime years of Madison just being a handcuff to Cook, only having a few weeks here or there. So I kind of view him almost as a descending asset, and I'm not necessarily sure. I think this is the most doubt I've ever had that he's the clear backup.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They drafted Ty Chandler this year as well, and so I think there's definitely more competition for his role, and perhaps leaving might actually do him some good. Maybe another team pays him and actually gives him the opportunity to be a lead back. So the fact that he's ending his rookie contract could be viewed as a positive, but I'll stick with the younger guys and go White, Gainwell, Madison personally.
I'm most optimistic in Rachaad White, though. I had high hopes for Keyshawn Vaughn last year. He kind of looked like he was starting to show something when he finally got an opportunity, and then he got lit up across the field, and then that play pretty much ended any chance of him having a long-standing use in fantasy football. But now I've just translated that over to Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White's more talented anyway, but I'm curious / excited to see how they use him this year. And I think Lenny will still be the clear workhorse, but I think there'll be some opportunity there.
One thing, none of us said Gainwell first. So, Jamie, at least that's your answer. It's probably not going to be draft Gainwell in the startup, whether you kind of believe in the Madison's continued role or potential increase in role, or in Rachaad White's upside. I think that's kind of where I think we'd either lean with either one of those options.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great reports coming out of Tampa on Rachaad White in pass catching. So I look for him to get a lot. I mean, you look back at last year, and Leonard had 68. I think it was 68 receptions. So there's a lot of receptions to go around.
I think he was like third among running backs. I think Najee Harris, Austin Eckler were the only ones with more. We got it wrong because apparently Gainwell is his favorite out of that group. But I think if you like Gainwell, you maybe also like Rachaad White for a lot of similar reasons. But it does seem like White almost might be the most clear backup out of those group. Like he's very clearly the number 2 running back in Tampa, already immediately ahead of Vaughn, and kind of he'll take the role that they kind of envisioned. Looks like Gio Bernard to get.
I could see a Zeke Pollard down in Tampa, with those two.
Don't even bring up the Pollard name. My eyes want to start twitching. That dude is overvalued, and it drives me crazy.
Well, Chevin Noon's asking, "Yo, what's good, boy?" So apparently Zach's saying not the value on Tony Pollard. That's not good at all.
He's good. 25 as a backup. People are treating him like the chance is coming soon, and I'm like, when? He's going to be 28 by the time he's an RB1 somewhere.
Where is that handsome host Devin at? Devin, I don't know. Devin's asking. I don't know, Devin. Where are you?
I'm glad someone asked. That's what I thought to myself when I first joined the call. But hey, at least someone's saying it.
I guess I didn't really inform you properly, did I? But no hack Kyle was actually trying to replace the handsomeness of Devin. I just got a haircut. Thank you to Pat's Barbershop, PA the Second on Twitter. Talk about him on the Full Press Fantasy Pod sometimes. A great musician as well. So
most people go to the barbershop and buy shampoo after they get done. You buy a shirt. Okay.
I mean, it's a nice, comfortable shirt. It's hot. You need the white summer shirts for these hot summer days. So apparently we're the Substitute Handsomes. So good job, guys. That'd be a great band name, the Substitute Handsomes.
Wouldn't be the first time I've been the substitute. No.
All right. So were there? I guess Jay, did you have any other camp notes that you wanted to touch on? Any other players you thought needed to be addressed?
Well, I think there's some big news that came out today with Deontay Johnson getting a 2-year extension. That's quite a bit less money than I thought he was going to get, with it being 18 and change per year. I don't think it hurts Pickens at all. I think it actually hurts Claypool's numbers. I mean, everything's going to hurt because of the quarterback situation, but you saw news come out the other day that Pickens wasn't even doing any special teams. That pretty much says that he's got a role as a big role as an offensive player. So don't want him to get hurt on special teams. But I think that's probably the biggest news, other than the bad news. But we'll leave that alone. I'll let y'all talk about
that. Apparently Mr. Scampers came in and heard slander. Was it Hamler slander? Was that potentially what?
Or was it Pollard?
It might have been Pollard.
Oh,
if it's Pollard, it's not slander. It's just truth. I'm sorry.
I do tend to agree with you, Zach. I mean, regularly, and this maybe is more of even a redraft conversation, but probably still applies to Dynasty. He's regularly viewed as a top 3, top 5 backup. But I mean, there's probably at least. Like I think Kareem Hunt is probably the most useful backup running back, but I think AJ Dillon would be up there, James Robinson as well. Like those 3 seem pretty solid. And then even then, I think I might prefer the young upside guys like James Cook or Rachaad White as backup options over Pollard in Dynasty. But redraft, I'd probably still rather have Jamal Williams than Pollard. So yeah, Garrison, a great Gerson appearance saying go Raiders. Any Raiders news, guys? Was there any Raiders stuff we needed to address or talk about? Gerson, if you want to feel
just
free
Hall of
to.
Famer to Hall of Famer. I think that's all that needs to be covered. But I mean, hey, same
Why
thing in Green
is
Bay now.
Waller passing the ball to Adams?
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He did call him a Hall of Famer, didn't he?
No, and then did you hear Rodgers talk about Lazard? Just saying like Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer.
Oh, okay.
No, I missed that. I did hear where
Is he throwing to Mercedes Lewis? Is that what that?
Yes. No, I mean I'm a guy that was low on Lazard, but just that's someone where I've seen enough out of camp. I've been high on Dubs and Watson for a long time, but seeing there obviously Watson's been on the pup. Dubs is impressing already. I knew he was awesome. So I'm loving that. But for me, it's always been Lazard, Watson, and Dubs as wide receiver 1 through 3. And I think soon enough, we're going to see that earlier than later. Like, I'm sorry, Sammy Watkins he's nothing. Like, at this point, I think he's proven that anytime you have expectations, they fall short.
I still think Randall Cobb's going to lead that team in receiving touchdowns, though.
I think he's the veteran presence. I just don't see him being the kind of workhorse that if he was younger, I think he would be. I don't trust it. I mean, if Randall Cobb looks like 2013 Randall Cobb again, I would love it. But I'm nervous. He's getting old.
I think your receiving touchdowns are going to come from A.J. Dillon, to be honest.
I don't disagree. I like Dillon.
Well, in just general, you could see just more rushing touchdowns as well. Maybe a repeat back to 2019.
I think Rodgers is a game manager this year. I don't want him in fantasy if it's a redraft, because for me, I believe that, this is going to be a run-first offense, and Rodgers is pretty much like the best of the best when it comes to being a game manager. They're going through their defense and their run game, and then they just need a guy that won't make mistakes. And you think of all these mediocre QBs that are usually in that slot. Suddenly you're putting Aaron Rodgers into that. So I'm optimistic for them.
To be fair, I think Tom Brady was called a game manager a few times as well. So
he's also called the GOAT, though.
Same letter.
The GOAT manager?
Yes, exactly.
Well, but so, okay, to your point about Rodgers in redraft, so you'd actually prefer to target him in dynasty leagues, thinking, this is maybe a growing pains year, and next year Rodgers bounces back fantasy-wise, or do you think in dynasty as well you're kind of done with him?
My next year Rodgers bounces back is more like, I think this is Rodgers' last year, and Jordan Love comes in next year and shows everyone that they were wrong. I love...
You mean, wait, are you saying like the fantasy people, or are you saying they'll prove Gutekunst wrong for drafting them?
Oh, the fantasy. All right, and outside of fantasy.
I hope, as a Packers fan, I hope you're right.
It's not even that. I think from my perception of, because I've done so much Jordan Love research, and an unhealthy amount realistically, but I think he's unfairly criticized relative to what we've seen. He played one game where he wasn't getting any first-team reps prior, and then Rodgers got COVID, and he was just thrown in. And, it's hard to expect him to succeed in that, and plus Devontae was out until the day before, returning from COVID as well. So, I think it's tough to assess, but everyone's just negative on what he is based off one bad game, and he was blitzed a ridiculous amount. I'm just like, hey, we don't know. He could suck, but he could also be good, and plus the Packers are realistically going to extend him where they've got him on a cheap deal. And I know we talked about that on the PLP, but for me, it's like, hey, if they extend him next year when he's entering his 4th year and they pay him like 3 years, $12 million a year, it sounds like a lot for a question mark. But if that suddenly means you have your starter for $12 million at quarterback, that's really cheap. So I think there's risk reward, but at this point, that far away from that draft class, there's not much risk anymore.
So, quick question for you: I'm with you on. I think this is Rodgers' probably last year, at least in Green Bay.
I think he's done.
You think he's done? Okay.
I don't want to defend Rodgers. I know why a lot of people dislike him, but I watch all those interviews he does, and all the hearing about all those ayahuasca trips and that kind of stuff. I think homeboy's ready to, you know, go take a permanent co-host spot on the Joe Rogan show here pretty soon.
That or go back to Hungary.
I think
Get
both
some
are good options.
Well, I hope he stays hungry because get that Super Bowl for the Packers.
Oh, that'll be this year.
I'll be honest. I kind of think he's got 2-3 more years in him, and I think the Packers' sake, because the truth is Jordan Love has 1 year left on his rookie contract. I think the worst thing,
2. They have the 5th year option because
they're not going to pick up the 5th year option.
Well, I mean, I got a
because I think to your point, Zach, they want to extend him and get him long term.
Okay.
So they don't want to. They don't want it to get to the 5th year option.
Okay, we're on the same page then. Okay.
To be honest, and I think the extension will be cheaper than the 5th year option. I don't think they want to pay that. I think they want to. I think what they want to do is have Rodgers at least play through 2023 because they don't want Jordan Love to take another snap on his rookie contract. Because at this point, to your credit, the stink around the NFL seems like the rest of the league wouldn't be interested, and that's why they could get him so cheaply. Now, if he plays his rookie season without the extension and actually does well, maybe we'll be optimistic and say leads him to the playoffs or at least keeps him close to competitive. That ups that price. So I think the Packers are hoping there's 2 years here with Rodgers at the very least, and that they can extend Love when no one really wants him.
And I guess my big concern with Rodgers is just the aspect of he's repeated this so many times where he does not want to fall off at all when he leaves. Like he wants to leave at the best, but he feels like he's no longer going to be there or it's about to kind of taper off. And obviously you never know because Tom Brady, kind of expressed that same sentiment what feels like 20 years ago, but here he still is. And so I think with some of those guys, it's tough to say, but I think Rodgers is so unique in that regard where he'll probably be moving on soon. I just want to see him get another Super Bowl first. And to end this subject, I'll say, this is the best Packer defense he's had since 2010, which I think you remember what happened that year.
Oh, yeah. And so Mr. Scampers with a great comment here. Jake Luton, the third longest neck in NFL QB history. I mean, Mike Glennon's 1. Who's number 2, though? Am I missing something
Brock
obvious?
Osweiler?
I suppose that probably makes sense.
I think I saw Brock Osweiler take a job somewhere recently. I was excited to see the rocket launcher name in the news again. Yeah, ESPN college football analyst. That's what it was.
And I think, how would you rank those guys, too? I mean, I think Luton's clearly third, so I guess it doesn't really matter. That's not what we want to rank. Let's not waste our time. But
I got a quick question for both of you.
Sure, go ahead.
So the game's on. Stidham is actually quarterbacking for the Raiders right now, but Josh Jacobs is in the backfield.
RB2.
I was wondering the same thing.
Well, is Kenyon Drake fully back from the injury? Like, I know, is that something that is he even active tonight? I know Jamir White's hurt too. So is that simply just they don't have the bodies? So let's put more carries on our lead back. That sounds like a great plan, Raiders.
Yeah, that first preseason game. Let's do that.
The Hall of Fame game is the one I will, or it's really week 1 and week 2. I try and assess the least. If I want to take anything away from preseason, I'll usually leave it for that one drive of the final week because I think that's where we kind of get more of an idea of, okay, who's out there getting those reps. And then they're like some of the younger guys obviously will stay on the field for a little longer, but then they usually are aggressive on pulling them out as well. So
what's the story with Jamir White? Why is he not in there?
I thought he got an injury. I think that he's been hurt for a little bit of training camp. So
one I missed.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what the injury was, but it seemed like he's been out for probably since the first week of training camp, and obviously still not back yet. I know Jamie and Glass having a conversation about TV shows. There was a recent 2-point conversion episode that went through TV shows a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Perry Mason, right? That's that. I was thinking there's one that Zach doesn't know about, right? I think that's one of them.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of them that Gladys listed that I didn't know about.
That's true. we could go on. I know Gladys agrees with the take Jacobs out of the game. Now we have a question actually from Mr. Scampers. So Davis Mills or Ozzy? Assuming that's Osweiler, Aussie.
How dare you call him Ozzy? It's Brocket Launcher, Brocktober. I mean, there's a lot of great ones.
The Brock Lobster.
Yep. I mean, I have a Brock Osweiler jersey just because I used to live in Denver or in Colorado, and I had to always hear Bronco fans talk about how he was going to be great, and I knew that he sucked, and then I bought a jersey for $5 just to wear it around after he was gone. I'm like, it's his year. And yeah.
There's been a
So
lot of news coming out that Lovie Smith is in love with Davis Mills right now and what he's doing in camp. So, I mean, I
Oh,
would
next
lean
lane.
that way.
Lovie Smith probably didn't have a good enough. He probably hasn't had a quarterback that good when he was with the Bears. It's like, oh man, I wish Cutler was this good.
That's not fair. Okay, it's true.
But I think so. To answer this question, I think if you ask a Broncos fan, they may actually say Osweiler because, fair enough, he contributed to a Super Bowl run. I mean,
Right.
I think even if it's the one game, the win against the Patriots on Monday night in Foxborough that gave the Broncos the number one seed, right? Gave them home field advantage in that AFC Championship game. That probably significantly contributed to that more than most backup quarterbacks contribute to a Super Bowl run. So if you're
Do-
asking this question to a Broncos fan, they'll probably say Osweiler. If you're asking any other person, though, they're going to say Davis Mills, I'd imagine, especially a
was-
Texans fan. I no doubt Houston fans are saying Davis Mills way better than Brock Osweiler. I think that's pretty clear and obvious.
He was talking about neck length, he said in the follow-up message.
Oh, so does
But-
Davis Mills have a long neck? I haven't. I just look at his numbers. I don't really look at his pictures of him.
I try to not watch Houston Texans games as much as possible, so I haven't paid attention to his neck length. I mean, I usually watch more than I would like of the Texans, but it's a struggle. It's one of those where I'm trying to find anything else to pay attention to on the field. So Davis Mills' neck length probably isn't.
Now,
big thing.
I want to address JV's comment here because I actually was overhearing this conversation happening the other day. But like a job bagging groceries, are there even grocery baggers anymore? Does that even exist? Like, I don't. I think that's kind of outdated, to be honest. Like, I think it's been this is well before COVID. I think it's been a decade since I've seen someone actually bag groceries in a grocery store as that's their job. Like the cashier may help, but like I don't see any designated baggers in Canada anyway. I don't know if that's still a states thing.
No. Publix does it. Publix does. They got baggers.
Okay.
They're usually high school kids or something like that. But back in the day when they had baggers, true baggers, you could you as a customer you could give them tips. You try to give baggers tips now, and they're like, no, we're not allowed to take tips, which is stupid. But
hey, I mean, on military bases, they'll stare at you waiting for a tip and offer to carry your stuff out, and just it's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Got rid of baggers because everything is now self-service. No matter
But
where you go. So.
Which is more out of date, bagging groceries in most grocery stores where it's not there, or the Broncos drafting QBs?
That's true because it's funny because they kept drafting them when they shouldn't have, and then the one year they probably should have Justin Fields, they didn't. So, yeah, you're right. But I mean, it all worked out. Now they have Russell Wilson. So,
yeah, I mean, if they're not 6'7", like that's what Elway liked. The Broncos fans should be happy that he stepped down from that position. He was ruining them.
Wow.
I mean, I will say, he was responsible for building a championship caliber defense. Got lucky that Peyton Manning wanted to go there, and he was able to sign Peyton Manning. But we'll give him credit, drafting Von Miller. I mean, seemed like a no-brainer pick at second overall that year, but put a lot of good pieces. So we'll at least give him credit he knew how to build a defense. But
defense-wise, he was great. But for him being a former quarterback, he could not pick a damn quarterback to save his life.
As smart as he was coming out of Stanford, he could not figure out how to draft anybody on the offensive side of the ball.
I mean, Drew Lock, Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler. And there's more, but it's not a good three right there to start with.
Did Paxton Lynch do better in the USFL this year than he did in the CFL last year? Meaning, did he actually even get on the field? Because he couldn't last year at all.
I was going to ask the question. I mean, you're the one that watches the CFL, right?
Oh, yeah. He didn't play. I didn't see him at all last year. He didn't play at all.
So all he had to do was get on the field for one play this year.
Yeah, he would have been better than his. So I don't know. I know he got drafted because I remember Saskatchewan released him so that he could enter the USFL draft, and I think he did get drafted. So I think he was on a team, but that's the limit of my USFL knowledge. And we won't talk more CFL. We'll get to dynasty trades, which I guess was kind of the point of this episode was, and so I think part of it was, okay, those camp news how do you kind of apply that to maybe a guy like KJ Hamler, for instance, off the news of Tim Patrick's injury? Is that someone you could now sell? Before, no one was willing to buy KJ Hamler, but like that's simply that he actually now has a trade price. Like even if you just get a third for him, he might actually be able to sell him. So it might be like looking like things like that is who's actually not even going to give you like skyrocket value, but enough value to that someone will actually give up a pick to get, or give up an asset of some sort. Maybe no one will give up a pick for Hamler, but you get a backup running back that you can use in your lineup that you prefer, that rather than hold the wide receiver.
Yeah, in a couple of my leagues right now, KJ Hamler is still out there on the waiver wire. I actually just went and snagged him. I've got Judy, so I went and snagged Hamler just to be on the, just to back me up a little bit. Hey, Gladys.
It's funny. My only league with Russell Wilson, my stack was Tim Patrick. So now that he doesn't have a Bronco stack, so maybe I should go look to see if Hamler is available. Thank you, Jay.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Gladys, happy that she can finally put a face on Gator. And the gator face won't try to eat your hand off either. That's always nice.
No.
Sorry if my references have too many teeth to them, but go ahead.
I appreciate them.
I do too. It's not as bad as being called, Mr. Gator a couple weeks ago. Zach could. That's why I had to change my whole outfit.
I mean, you didn't have like Jesse or anything or Jay or any of it on your.
Yeah,
on your name,
says
and
Fantasy
you were in all the
J
Gator
in his
gear.
Twitter handle, though.
But I didn't put that on there last week. So
okay.
He was just setting me up for it. And I'm terrible with names. I wanted to be calling him by his name, but I was like, damn it, I can't remember his name. And I see Gator right there. I see all the Gator stuff. And I told Doc when I was telling him afterwards, I was like, yeah, in the moment, he was just Gator to me for the rest of the episode because I wasn't going to ask him mid-take.
So what you're
I've
saying?
been asked that question many a times. It does not bother me. So go ahead, just call me Gator. I'm good.
What's the J stand for? It stands for Jay, just like Homer J. Simpson, right? I think you're smarter than Homer Simpson, though. I'll give you that, Jay. But it's funny. Based on your shirt, I'm sure Zach would love to Dynasty rewind last episode to be able to get that name in at the proper time.
No. That's the best part of it. It's live. Let's go.
I'm still happy with how it went. I don't know if I want to rewind and try and do a redo.
No.
All right, so then onward and forward then. So going to talk some Dynasty trades. And unfortunately, co-hosts couldn't be here, but Brian still contributed some trades that he had seen in recent leagues. So I thought it'd be cool to just kind of talk through some different trades we've seen and what we think of those results. So I guess we'll go through 3 trades that he submitted because they're all from the same league. So 14-team Superflex tight end premium. And I guess all within the last couple weeks. So the first one we'll start with is Cameron Brate and Travis Etienne for Cam Akers and a 23 third.
That's highway robbery.
Really? I actually think it's pretty fair.
I guess the third for Brate makes sense. I guess some people are higher on Akers than I am. I am notoriously low on Akers and very, very high on Etienne. So if I could give Akers straight up for Etienne, I would be thrilled every time.
I was so hoping you were going to go the other way when you said highway robbery because I was like, man, I just want to. Etienne is going to smash this year, in my opinion. I think, honestly, this dude is going to be a top 12.
All right.
The only
way RB5.
Well, I can agree with that. The only way he is not going to be a top 12 is if the coaching staff gets in the way and tries to slow him down, puts James Robinson in, which I can see them doing a little bit of, but this dude is going to smash this year. And if you can get him, you might have already your time to get him might have already passed.
Jamie mentioning that too. I guess, I have a hard time seeing Etienne a tier above Akers just because I think we've already seen Akers return to the field from his injury, whereas we really don't know the effects of that Liz Frank injury on Etienne. What's that going to do? Like what is the availability is going to be for week 1? It seems like he's on track to play week 1, but don't know. We've never even seen him in the NFL, to be honest, and what he can do. So I guess I'm just thinking I'd much rather have the third than Cameron Brate. I think Tight end premium doesn't always just mean that tight ends are going to be great. And I think especially if it's only like 1.5 tight end premium, I think I'd much rather have the third. If we're getting to like 2 PPR for tight ends, okay, that's okay. I think I'd probably rather have Brate than the third. So the amount of PPR points per reception for tight ends, what is that premium? I think would determine maybe even what side of this I'm on.
Well,
My
especially
thought with the third,
Tampa's
though.
done.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, especially with everything Tampa's done at the tight end position, adding a Kyle Rudolph. You know, you got K-Dot. Cameron Brate's been there. He just has not proven anything to this point. Go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I agree with that completely. My thought with the 23 third is more along the lines of it's a 14-team league where you
Yeah, that
figure
is true.
if you finish or if you win the league, that's the 42nd pick, and that's where that's after a normal 10-man that with 4 rounds, it's already past that. You're going into the waiver area. So for me, it's low risk for Bray. I was more optimistic about what he could potentially be this year before they brought in Rudolph, but like Jay mentioned, they gave him a shot before. Obviously Gronk was there, but he never really did anything with his opportunity. Why would we really believe that it's going to change this year? Akers concerns me. I've looked at a lot of like the play breakdowns over his time prior. I just wasn't a big Akers believer since he came out of the draft. I mean, I know he had some big scoring weeks, but I was never sold. So I guess for me, just the injury kind of pushed me off of it. And Etienne is someone more so that I feel really good about. But it's funny because they're both coming back from injury. So, realistically, it makes sense to trade one for another where if one is indifferent on who's better or worse and the other one likes one of them more, it's a reasonable trade on both ends. I don't think either one of them is leaving it really feeling like they have the upper hand unless you're like me where you're really high on one and really kind of low compared to everyone else on the other.
Yeah, there's really risk on both sides of this trade. So it's not like one person's absorbing all the risk. All of these assets really are risky. Like even you mentioned, Zach, it's in a 14-team league, a third round pick has the risk to being outside of the kind of usable or like really viable players that we want to draft range. So Gerson has Etienne and RB13 in his projection. So it appears that I am the Etienne hater on this show because you're all talking top 5, even top 15. That seems a little. I'm struggling even to top 20 to be honest. Now I think the one reason Etienne could smash over Akers is pass catching. Does Etienne have it in him to catch 60, 70 receptions? I mean, I think he's the talent. But again, to your point, Jay, does the coaching staff let him get that many receptions? They let him play enough on third downs? Do they give him out there in space enough? And I think because the problem with Akers more than anything else, and I know some people are really concerned, how his performance last year. I actually thought, to me, his performance last year in the playoff was almost a win in that so close to an Achilles injury, he didn't re-injure himself. Mm-hmm. I actually thought that, like, even though he barely produced, I still came out of that playoff more optimistic than if he hadn't come back at all. But what scares me with Akers is that, including the playoffs, I remember looking through this. He's basically played a full season in the NFL. If you count his playoff games, I think he's played close to 17, 18 NFL games, and he has like 14 career receptions. Like even Derrick Henry's catching more passes. Even Elijah Mitchell last year, I think, had 20 receptions. So that's the thing that scares me more than anything else with Akers is, are they ever going to let him play on third down? Are they really ever going to throw him the football? Because right now, that's a big concern with Dobbins. But even he, as a rookie, had, I think, 25 receptions. Even, was getting close to, I think he almost had 30 targets. And, that's almost doubling up what Akers has had. So I think that's the major concern with Akers for me is, are they ever going to throw him the football? Please, McVay, throw him the football.
Yeah, and I think it's the complete opposite for Etienne. When James comes back, when Robinson comes back, it could very well be first and second down, James Robinson, third down, Etienne. He gets his pass catching. So in a PPR league, yes, but it could very well be that way. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping Etienne gets on the field, shows out, and it's wheels up. Let's go.
I have more concern. Or sorry, I just have more concern with Robinson. I liked Robinson, but we're comparing two guys both with ACL injuries, right? Akers and Etienne.
Achilles.
No. Etienne had Liz Frank.
Etienne was what?
It's a
No,
foot injury.
Yeah, no, Liz.
I think it was like a Liz Frank fracture.
Oh,
in his
okay.
foot.
And Akers was Achilles.
Yeah,
Was it
as is James Robinson.
Okay, that's
Etienne's
what I thought. I
teammate.
know
Yeah,
James
those two have the same
Robinson was
injury. Yeah.
Achilles, but
Yeah.
for some reason I was thinking one of them was just it was a knee injury because the Achilles stuff scares me a lot more. That can really jeopardize the explosiveness, the cutting abilities, and that's where. While I like James Robinson before, obviously if I have Etienne, I want to have the other one, so I have both just in case. But I am nervous / questionable to see what Robinson is when he comes back. Obviously, you hope for the best and hope he can be a productive running back, but it's definitely scary coming back from an injury like that. I mean, across a lot of sports, we've seen guys return from that injury and not necessarily be the same.
Agreed.
Now, to Gladys's comment about Peterson isn't known for throwing to running backs, I guess you're almost asking it, but Miles Sanders as a rookie had 50 receptions. So if Etienne can get to that as a rookie, I think he'd be pretty satisfied if he can get Miles Sanders usage as a rookie. 179 carries, 63 targets. If Etienne can do that, then yeah, he probably will outscore Akers unless Akers is really smashing with touchdowns. Again, assuming that Akers doesn't magically start to get a bunch of receptions. So to that, Gladys, I would say, is that Peterson, or is that just Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts even to a certain extent? Is Trevor Lawrence maybe a quarterback that's going to be more willing to throw down to the running backs? It just naturally. So I wonder if that means more targets than you've seen in the Eagles' offense, where it seems like Wentz was always really aggressive throwing downfield, and Jalen Hurts really good at running for first downs. So not so much of a need to throw down to the running backs in those instances.
And ironically, they did that in college.
Well, yeah. Lawrence, Etienne, college teammates. So I think that's the connection of why we think that pass catching connection can work for them, and why I think I would still agree. I'd rather have Etienne than Robinson, because it seems like Robinson might really be limited, especially coming off the Achilles. Like, you really want him a lot of straight line running. You don't want him twisting around too much. I think so. Played Robinson on a lot of passing downs is where you might risk a re-injury of the Achilles, especially for a December Achilles tear. I mean, if he starts in September, that'll be only 9 months removed, similar to, I guess, the Akers timeline. Whereas we would have maybe when Robinson first tore his Achilles and we hadn't seen Akers return, I almost thought Robinson's not going to play at all in 2022. And now it's almost like he might make it for week 1. So that's definitely a far cry too. I think what Akers has done in terms of the ability to come back, maybe not be explosive, but is still maybe changed a bit of our expectations with Achilles tears.
Isn't that the same thing with the ACLs right now with Godwin coming back so quick? I mean,
yep.
The medical stuff has just gotten so good. So, no, I agree 100% with that.
So Jamie's asking, it sounds like Etienne at camp is being used all over. So not just in the backfield, but out in the slot as well, it seems like, and used as a receiver. So that's, again, what we that's the usage we kind of want for Etienne. And it seems like Gladys is confirming that. Also, Jamie has pointed out that you apparently are on the clock there, Gator.
I'm looking at that. So let's, do you guys want to make a pick with me? We're just
sure.
I'm always ready.
Yeah, we can do live picks. Sure.
So we are at 13-12 and 14-11 here, back-to-back picks. I believe that we are doing single quarterback, just a redraft. So I mean, we're well into this. It's almost over.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what's on the board right now. We got Alberto, Tua, which I've got quarterback already. So Noah Fant, Tim Patrick, Mark Ingram, Mecole Hardman, Gerald Everett. Those are the top 4 or 5.
So do you have a tight end already?
Right now, my tight end, I got Dalton Schultz and Zach Ertz.
Who's your starting QB?
Josh Allen.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be fine ignoring those positions and just focusing on running back, wide receiver depth. If it was a normal draft, and obviously when I'm doing mock drafts, I try to think team build and this was a real draft, how would I operate? I probably would ignore those positions.
My question is, are there any teams in that draft that have not necessarily been aggressive on addressing the quarterback situation and have some rather risky QBs they're depending on?
Because
that's like,
Yeah,
say someone has Justin Fields or, like, someone, like, where there's upside, but there's also questions, like, if they have Trey Lance as their QB1 where you have a lot of hopes, but we don't know for sure, that's where I might if I've seen a couple of teams kind of neglect the QB and take high risk, high reward guys, I might take a Tua where I can trade him at a later point and get more because say Tua is performing well with all these weapons around him. I can capitalize on that while they're in need of something that's producing more at that position. But I would otherwise I would do wide receivers. I mean, obviously you said Tim Patrick. What are some other wide receivers available?
wide receivers available right now, or Tim Patrick, Miko Hardman, Van Jefferson, Jamison Crowder, your guy, Sammy Watkins, and Palmer. Those are the top 4 or 5.
Any rookie running backs then? I'd probably look for
That's
those.
where I was going next, and I think I'm going to take this guy, Brian Robinson, right away.
Well, I think Jamie's almost saying it sounds like you need a running back. At least he thinks so. And he, mentioned Tyrion Davis Price or Brian Robinson. Definitely between those two, I would go with Robinson.
You can't listen to Jamie. Jamie doesn't know what he's talking
You're
about.
back to back on picks. I mean, I would just take TDP and Brian Robinson.
Now, is this a dynasty mock or a redraft mock?
It's a redraft single quarterback mock.
I think Sony Michel is going to lead the Dolphins in rushing touchdowns. At least that's my touchdown projection, just because the rest of that team really doesn't have a history. I mean, most are that one stretch, but outside of that, he's not shown a history of production at all or like touchdown or yards. So I could see Michel getting 5+ touchdowns rushing. So I think he might be the main red zone back, which I could see Davis Price maybe doing that if Elijah Mitchell's injured. But I think Elijah Mitchell is going to be the guy to get most of he'll probably be the third down back and the goal line back, and everyone else will just get
I like Robinson as the other one there, but paired with Michel, I think
good balance of a rookie and a vet. And then 2-point conversion host Jay joined in saying, "Hey guys," so hey Jay,
happy belated birthday. You're 21 now, right? Something like that. I know he's just a young buck.
So mature. But yeah, I guess we got a Jay in the crowd. We got a Jay on screen. Just getting it back to these dynasty trades. We've talked about 1 through 45 minutes, so maybe we can get back to a little more. So again, another one of these Brian trades in this 14-team league. Jalen Tolbert and Rashad White for a 2024 first-round pick.
And again, this is an absolute smash. Give me Tolbert. Give me Rashad White.
Oh.
Over a first in a 14-team league 2 years out, give me those guys. I'm all in.
In a 14-teamer, Rashad White might have been a first-round pick this year, but just combining 2 second-rounders doesn't usually equal a first. So I actually almost thought it was the opposite way, that you wouldn't be able to get a first for either of these players individually, and maybe you could expect more coming back, like a third coming back instead, but I just think the fourth is the first. As much as I love Rashad White, the first feels like the most valuable asset.
You will in about 4 weeks of preseason. So give me 2. So in about 6 weeks, you'll get at least a first for Tolbert. He's gonna show up in Dallas.
Interesting, because and I guess that'll depend, because I know for myself there's a very limited list of wide receivers I'm willing to spend a first on. And I seriously doubt Tolbert makes it into that group. Like I'm talking maybe 8, maybe 8, 9 wide receivers. So I don't think Tolbert's getting into top 8 dynasty wide receiver territory. So that's why
the first 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not talking about, the whole year. First 2 or 3 weeks.
But I don't know. I feel like we're still a little slow in Dynasty, where 2-3 weeks of production isn't going to necessarily drop them into, again, to the top 12 wide receivers. So that's why still I'd prefer the first, but I guess I get in a 14. The other thing too, I'd like to know the number of starters, because if this is 14 teams start 12, okay, then maybe as many 2-for-1 trades as possible is ideal. But if this is even 14 teams start 10, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Jay. Maybe I'm overvaluing that first, but
for me, it's all situational in regards to team structure. If I say just want some young depth pieces and I feel like I'm a win now team, maybe giving up my 24 first is worth it. Where I expect that to be towards the end of the first round, and I got some depth with guys that have upside. But if I'm a team that, isn't necessarily in a great spot, I probably would not want just a 24 first. I'd probably want to wait it out, let potential higher value there, because if you're not in a win now situation and you're signing up for 24 first, you're just signing up for another year of not winning. Like I need it
But
in the following.
the truth is, though, I mean, you're trading for this 24 first. You can trade this 24 first in season. This doesn't mean you're waiting 2 years to make this pick. You might be able to
Yeah, but I
use
think
that pick. Whereas, whatever player you're able to grab with that pick, that particular manager might not want Rashad White. They might not want Jalen Tolbert. But the picks are more liquid and fluid for that.
I think there's a happy medium on when to capitalize on rookie prices. It's directly after the draft when someone just didn't get their guy and everyone's still very excited about the draft just taking place. And then otherwise, I don't really want to do it until at least mid-season when we've had a little bit of actual NFL production, a little bit of time to assess one way or the other. So I get it. You're not married to the 24 first by any means, but for me, if I'm not getting a first in that year, it still can be tricky because if I'm pursuing someone that I actually do want, sometimes owners can be stingy about like, oh, that's a pick next year. Like I need something more immediate, and then they'll devalue it.
Yeah, I might feel a little bit different about it if it was a 23 first, being that, a whole year closer, but being that far out, I mean, as they say in LA, F them picks.
And so the next trade as well, another 2-for-1. So one side we've got Michael Gallup and James Robinson. The other side is Leonard Fournette.
Go ahead, I'll let you have that one.
I'll take Fournette all day. I mean, if I need an immediate running back to help lift me into more of a contender spot, I'll gladly give up Robinson and Gallup to get Fournette. I think I'm assuming if you're acquiring Fournette there, obviously there's more long-term upside with Gallup, but I think a move like that tells me you're in win now mode. You're trying to be aggressive to upgrade at running back, and I think that's a trade that does so where he also didn't necessarily give up a lot. Like obviously if Gallup is the clear wide receiver 2 and he's producing for a long time to come, might look different down the road, but realistically Fournette should be that primary back, getting a good chunk of fantasy points. And yeah, I like it for them.
I agree, 100%. I think Gallup is, even if Gallup comes back as a wide receiver 2, that's probably going to be next year. The Gallup and James Robinson, that owner is probably looking at next year is actually doing anything. The Fournette owner is getting it for this year. So I like the Fournette side on that.
Yeah, I think just the fact that you're trading away 2 injured assets for a healthy asset that, I mean, Fournette could outscore both Robinson and Gallup combined this year. And, again, going for a championship at those points will be important, especially right off the get-go. Like right from week 1, there's a chance that Robinson and Gallup aren't back until week 4, week 5, week 6, and maybe Gallup even further than that. I mean, so, waiting on 2 assets. Also, I think that the advantage of this trade is also freeing up the roster spot. And to a certain extent, that's also kind of what you get with the Tolbert and White trade. You actually free up 2 roster spots there. So if this is a league with deep waiver wires and there's still players available that are worth picking up, I definitely like both those trades a lot better. Here you're getting the extra roster spot. You can go pick up another player that a chance at a backup running back, or anyone that's, again, looking to have some camp hype, anyone that you could maybe pick up and then flip for a future pick.
I'm all about it. Like trying to clear roster spots. I usually try and do it before the preseason even begins because I usually have names that I was monitoring entering the draft and then I knew their stock was low. So I'll snag them then. But the more guys I can stash and then monitor the preseason, see if they can climb depth charts, the better. I mean, that's where I was taking, Jarrett Patterson, Elijah Mitchell, a lot of those guys in rookie drafts, the week or the day after the NFL draft ended where their stock was really low and no one had any idea about who they were, like a price to pay. Like they weren't trying to acquire them. And then by the end of camps, at least for Elijah's sake, people wanted him and the price was way higher than what I paid, which was a 4th rounder. And then someone like Jarrett Patterson, even like he's a UDFA that no one heard of, and I mean, realistically, he wasn't guaranteed to even make the roster, but he had 1 or 2 productive weeks when there was some injuries last year. And relative to being a UDFA, you give me 1 or 2 weeks as a productive running back in fantasy, and I mean, you already gave me more than what I paid.
Yep.
And I think with Patterson, it was the timing, right? I think that was like championship week. He had his big game. So if you had
Yep.
that those type of dividends would have really paid off. Jamie's asking us, someone apparently wants Paris Campbell. A league mate of it has kind of reached out, seems like, and said they want Paris Campbell. So what's his value with 23 picks or player value? Or should I just keep him? I would say the fact that someone actually wants him tells me you shouldn't keep him. The fact that you can get anything for Paris Campbell is a win, because with all his injuries and lack of production in the NFL, I'd be like, I feel like in most leagues you can't get a third or even a fourth for him. So if this person's saying they're willing to give an asset of some sort, I'd say definitely don't keep him. I think now the discussion is what is the price. So
I think. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it depends on what they're offering, what kind of options you have around on that team. Like if you are very limited in regards to guys that could have potential upside at the wide receiver position, then I might be more stingy in regards to what you're paying to get them. I think the tricky part with Paris Campbell is we know the talent is there somewhere, but every time we've tried to convince ourselves that he'll actually stay on the field, he's maintained the same thing where he never stays on it. And that's where I don't necessarily I would
there's like 5 names drafted ahead of Metcalf that make no sense, to be honest. Even back then, I thought that I think that the main consensus was DK shouldn't have fallen that far. You kept seeing the names that were going ahead of him. It's like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. And in hindsight, you can easily say it, like guys like N'Keal Harry and JJ Arcega-Whiteside definitely shouldn't have gone ahead of DK Metcalf. And
I still think
Campbell,
I still think of last year's rookie class where I looked at, I mean, I love Kyle Pitts too, but Jamar Chase was clearing away 101 for me. And like, I get running backs, regardless of format, are more valuable. Didn't care. Jamar Chase was 101, and then there was everyone else, but I was sending out smoke screens left and right in all of my leagues. And I got him in so many leagues, and I'm just like, doing startups this year, watching Jamar go ahead of both of those running backs and Kyle Pitts. I'm like, I'm glad this worked out. This worked out well.
Jay talked about the Ohio State wide receiver name pedigree. That might also impact with Campbell, maybe why he went so high. But just back to the Jamie's original question of in picks. So if this person wants Campbell, you think it's unreasonable? I'd ask for a third.
Yep,
give me your 23 third, thinking that it's probably someone wanting Campbell is probably more willing to pay that than if you were just blindly sending out offers to give me your third for Campbell. And people aren't really looking for Campbell, they probably wouldn't necessarily get that. But someone who's trying to get him, I think you can get a third out of this other manager.
Hang for a second. If they're hitting you up saying they want him,
that's exactly
I'm going to start higher. Obviously, if I say a first, it's just kind of like a non-starter.
Yep.
But if I increase the price a little bit, I would at least say, let me get a second, or even if it's a 24 second, but I'm clearly moving up around, but I want to start with that, see how they react, because if they're reaching out to you saying they want them, they might believe that he'll actually stay healthy and he can produce at the NFL level. So I would rather try and start there, and then knowing deep down that a third round this year, next year, I'm perfectly content with receiving when giving them up.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I want a third minimum. That's where I'm at. So I'm going to start with a second. This guy's probably thinking, okay, let me send him a late third. And it all depends on where that, where he perceives his drafts is going to be anyway. But if he's thinking he's going to send a fourth, I say a second. Let's meet in the middle with a third, which I'm good with anyway.
Yep.
That's where I would start.
Even give a second, I'll give Campbell in a third, right? Even just the round one up pick swap would also be worth it too. So definitely options there. Again, I don't mind just moving him for what looks like a good running back that could be, a backup running back, an injury away type guy. Apparently they got Tolbert in the third this year. That's good value because I was seeing Jalen Tolbert go a lot in the late second. So getting him in the third of a rookie draft, kudos on the value there, JB.
Nice job.
So Jay, want to talk about some of your trades? I know you listed, I think, 3 here. So I'll let you pick whichever one you'd like to talk about first.
All right. Well, I just go with the first one that's on there. It's just a 10-team single quarterback with I think it was 4. If I'm not mistaken, it's 4 IDP positions, but I didn't even include the IDPs in this. So the only thing that it's Javonte Williams and Chris Olave for Deebo Samuels and a 23 first.
You see, I almost assumed it was Jameson Williams, and this was going to be a lot easier of a discussion. But that actually is pretty tricky with the running back, to be honest.
It depends on the team structures. Like, some of these are so hard to give up a definitive answer because say that team that acquired Javonte and Olave, like they don't have a lot of good pieces to really compete now. If that 23 first is looking like it could be towards the top end of the draft, I'm getting very excited. But also, it's tough with 1 QB leagues because we hear all this hype about the 2023 draft class with quarterbacks. But in 1 QB format, that's still going to be a late first realistically. Like if they're a great one, like think of all the buzz Trevor Lawrence had, and he wasn't going in the top half of the first round. I mean, he wasn't even being considered there. And that's where
you're almost losing maybe 3 first-round players. If there's 3 first-round quarterbacks, like that's 3 less valuable players that you're having in your first round of your 1 QB league, and so you're forcing up other players that would normally be at the end of the first. They're in the middle first, and
I view Deebo as an upgrade over Olave, and I think there's a difference, but there's a lot of running backs I like in next year's class. I know everyone talks about Bijan, but there are a lot of other good ones that come to mind. I don't want to start listing them because then I won't stop. But there's a lot of names I'm watching with excitement this year that I think can be good values. And I mean, I think it makes sense for both sides. All the guys are young involved, there's all kind of upside. I think Deebo is kind of already kind of at the peak in a way. So I think that's where I would probably lean towards the Javonte and Olave side, just due to the fact that I believe there's more upside, more potential value I could get out of. Even if I flip them, there's still more for them to grow where I could sell them at a higher point. I don't know if Deebo's price will ever really go higher than what it is right now after his production last year, and now he's got the extension. But yeah, and he's a couple years older.
I guess it's about replicability. Could he reproduce what he did last year production wise? He probably outscores Javonte and Olave for a first. I feel like, and again, maybe this is kind of a super flex lens, but if you were in the middle first this year, it was really tough to trade for straight out to get 23 picks. It seems like you almost had to give up a 104 to get a random 23 first. So I don't know that Olave can fetch a 23 first in a lot of leagues. So my initial reaction, like instinct, was the Deebo first side, just because I think you're slightly winning at both. I think Deebo is slightly more value than Javonte, and I think the first is slightly more value than Olave. The 1 QB though makes me does question that last statement though. So I would say this is incredibly fair. It's really tough to pick a side, even if I'm slightly leaning the Deebo side.
This was not one of my trades. This was a trade that was in one of my leagues, but I leaned the Deebo in the 23 first as well. Reason being is Deebo is, I think, better than either one of the Javonte or Chris Olave. That 23 first, like you were saying, Zach, with the running backs, the wide receivers, the top end wide receivers, even though we had some great ones coming out this year, you got some great ones coming next year as well with Jackson Smith and Jigba. You've got Boutte, all of those guys coming. So there's going to be some good ones coming. Let's not do the depth thing.
I'm trying to tune you out. I don't want to start on it. I've got like 300 plus players on my Debbie rankings Google sheet. Like I don't even want to start even thinking about some of those guys because it's a snowball effect for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so I've got a few trades as well that these are all trades that I have actually made recently. Well, some back in the rookie drafts of these leagues. So it's funny because I've got a complicated league with a really simple trade, and then a more simple league with a bunch of complicated trades. So I don't know any feeling for flavor. Anything you guys want to hear in particular?
Which one is it on the sheet, or is it not on the sheet?
Okay, so
Yeah,
that 2014 2-copy, I don't understand the 2-copy stuff. So
it's duplicate. Okay. So it's two of the same guy.
Yeah, there's 2 copies of every player in the well, this was actually an auction startup, but yeah, there's 2 copies of every player available, which is how it makes up for the 24-team league without everyone having barren teams and there being no one available. So
can we take a guess as to which team you are in each of them?
So you lose twice a week.
No, there's not necessarily. You're not necessarily playing. I'll win twice a week, but you're not necessarily playing to opponents. You still, well, actually, to be fair, I think there were actually some weeks where you did play 2 games. You'd end up with 2 head-to-head matchups.
But you're playing 2 different players or 2 different teams.
Yeah, but that's I think that doesn't necessarily have to happen, and I don't think it necessarily happened every week either. I think there were some weeks where you just had 1 matchup, so that depended. But yeah, the only stipulation with the 2 copies of the players were during the auction, you could only nominate one copy of a player could only be on the board at a time. So if you nominated Jonathan Taylor, the second Jonathan Taylor copy couldn't be nominated until the first copy was won.
Okay,
and then post auction, the only stipulations are the 2 copies of the same player cannot be on the same team. So you can't decide to have 2 copies of the same player. So that's the only stipulations in terms of how the copies function. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm just trying to figure out which side I think you are. I'm leaning in favor of the DeAndre Hopkins side.
So yeah, so mention that 24 teams, 2 copies, start 11, and then the other thing with this league, and I guess it's 2 wide receivers involved. So this doesn't necessarily matter as much, but tiered PPR. So running backs get 1 point, wide receivers get 1.25, and then it's tight end premium because tight ends get 1.75, and then a 0.0515 point per carry. And yeah, Zach is correct. I acquired DeAndre Hopkins for Kadarius Toney. And I did wonder if this was something I actually talk about in terms of maybe something I should talk about maybe about an hour ago. We were talking about training camp stuff, but it seems like Kadarius Toney there was a lot of stink on him in the off season, but now he's there at training camp kind of producing. So go ahead, Jay.
I would say he's just producing left and right, and it just sounds like his value is skyrocketing right now.
Well, and that's what I tried to test. So over the last week, have basically I went to every manager that had a 2nd round pick, thinking that that's kind of where he was drafted in rookie drafts last year. So can I recoup that 2nd round value? No one would give a 23 second. Literally every single manager that had a 2nd, I went and made the offer, exercised it. I got 2 counters. And again, 24 teams. So there's even more teams to trade from. So I probably sent out, I can go look, but I probably sent out 10, 12 offers and got 2 counters back. So really, it seems like in this league, no one was interested in Toney. I think this is a league where the antics are kind of, maybe there's less patience for that type of thing. It seems like it's the type of league where they really punish Claypool for all the TikTok stuff. And so for a guy like Toney, it seems like the stink on him is, even though he's shown production, his attitude and the things surround him seems like that kind of is left a stink to. So no one would give a second. And one of the counters that intrigued me though was I had to give up Toney and KJ Osborne for DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green. Now the trick here is I've got Kyler Murray on this team, so going for the stack. And I think they give me 2 young players and I'll give you 2 stack options. I wasn't quite willing to do that, but the offer intrigued me enough that can we take Osborne and Green out of this and just do Toney for Hopkins? I wasn't sure what that value was, but I mean, if Toney can produce anywhere near Hopkins, I suppose I lose that. But what do you guys think?
I think I like it better straight up. And I mean, we already know Toney is nothing special. I mean, he went to a college that wasn't anything special, right?
Watch your mouth.
No, I like Darius
with bad quarterbacks through college, so he can do. I think he can do it if he gets his skull on his head right, he'd be all right.
And I mean, if you want to believe like the stuff as well with Kenny G, just not building that chemistry with Daniel Jones, there's opportunity there with Tony if he can stay on the field and be locked in. It's easy to feel optimistic there. I think, I mean, I'll credit a lot of these trades. There's none really so far that I'm outraged by. I feel like a lot of them I've usually seen in my leagues where, I get the trade has been completed notification on Sleeper and I open it and then my eye starts to twitch and my face turns red because I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, why wouldn't they send that offer to me? I would have taken that in a heartbeat.
I'd have
No,
paid
these are all
more.
fair.
Yeah.
They're rational.
Which yeah, I think the only one that I really saw right away and thought, okay, this is the answer was the Fournette trade. Again, just getting 2 injured assets for a guy that could be a top 10, top 12 running back seemed like that would seem easy. But yeah, all the rest I had a really hard time picking a side. Jamie has a question actually. 3 weeks ago, he traded Josh Palmer, Tyrion Davis Price, and a 23 fourth for Kenneth Gainwell and Kadarius Toney. You see, that seems like that's a really cheap price on Toney. Like this is back when there was before all this training camp hype, where like his value was really depressed. A 3rd round pick rookie wide receiver in Palmer, a 3rd round pick running back. Like I think I'd much rather have Gainwell than Davis Price, and then a 23 fourth in Palmer for Tony. Like I'll take that for Tony. Yeah, so great trade all around.
I
Jamie. I
like
think you
TDP,
smashed that.
but I think
That's probably the least fair trade we've seen in all the trades we've mentioned. So great job, Jamie. Way to be on the winning
I
side.
like TDP for sure. I'm not high on Gainwell, but that's still an offer I'm easily going to accept if I'm Jamie. I mean, that's just
The
it's
difference
not.
between Tony and Palmer is too much.
Oh, it's massive. I mean, if you offered me Palmer and just that was it the fourth,
Yeah.
23 fourth for Tony, or if you just did like TDP for Gainwell, I'm not going to see anyone do that deal either. And that's where it's like try and package any parts
Yeah.
of that trade for the one receiving end. It doesn't balance out regardless of how you look at it. So that's one hell of a pull.
So Jamie's calling him Kadarius Toney the squirrel. So now that you've made this trade successfully, don't hide and squirrel. Yeah, show it proud. Talk about it in all these live chats. So good job, Jamie. I guess I do want to go back to one of Brian's trades. Just 'cause it's pretty simple. So a 12-team PPR, no tight end premium. So this is just conventional scoring. Khalil Herbert for Zach Ertz. So this is backup running back on his rookie contract, young player for older veteran tight end who is a starter on his team. So what are we thinking here, guys?
Give me Ertz. Yeah, I'm taking Ertz on that one. I'm sorry, Zach. I'm going to take Ertz on that because just with the D-Hop 6 weeks, give me Ertz.
Give me Herbie fully loaded. I want the young running back option. David, I mean, isn't his contract up after this year?
I think this is his last year, I believe.
Yeah, I want to believe that it might go somewhere else, and Herbert is definitely the RB2 as of right now. If Monty has any, or I know, I like the other Bears running back
Travis
as well.
Ebner. This regime drafted. This regime did not draft Herbert, so that's kind of.
Like
it's also.
Yeah.
It's also, I don't know, it's kind of like Madison. Like I know we like what we saw last year from Herbert. I think everyone was making that assumption that Herbert is the clear number 2. Do we know anything from training camp that like solidifies that? Like Ebner's not getting any work with the ones at all, and it really is a top 2 guys, or is this a true competition for that backup job?
I think there's a true competition. My concern is more so on the Ertz front though, where I think I'm getting upside with Herbert and a potential chance. Obviously, it could just be a complete dud. Ebner takes over as the RB2. Khalil Herbert falls down the depth chart now and then never even gets a chance to be an RB1, right? Like that's a clear logical possibility, but with Ertz, I don't know if I trust the production to maintain. He's had injury issues before. I'm nervous about that. I know there's, Marquise Brown got arrested now, D-Hop is suspended, but I don't necessarily trust that the production will maintain. And say Ertz is out for 1 or 2 weeks, they drafted Trey McBride. I like McBride a lot, and my concern is more so if there's any sort of crack that opens an opportunity even for 1 or 2 weeks for McBride, he's going to capitalize on that, and that's really going to eat into the workload for the rest of the year.
See, and I guess when I look at trades like this right here, and I'm looking at a backup running back versus a starting tight end. The one that's getting the starting tight end, if you're going to get Ertz, you are a competing team.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that's you're doing this to put you over the top. This guy is going to put the numbers up for the first 6 weeks, and that's all you're wanting, the first 6 weeks this year. If you remember when they got Ertz from Philly, he was a tight end 3, tight end 4 for those like 4 or 5 weeks right when he first got there. Him and Kyler had that connection. This is a win now trade for me, getting Ertz.
It's a fair trade too. I'll say that. Like, obviously I like the Herbert side, but if I'm in a win now situation, I don't really have a good tight end, or I want another option that's a veteran that could potentially fill in those slots early, as say I have some young guys that I'm waiting to see on my bench. I love the move on that front. It just all very situational, but low risk for both teams. You didn't really give up a guy that is a massive loss, and I'm assuming if you traded away Zach Ertz, he was probably your backup tight end anyway. I'm going to assume that it's either that or you're not expecting to compete, so you just want to try and get a younger guy. But I'm most likely going to. Sorry, I thought she was about to climb on my chair, and I was going to have to yell at it. But yeah, no,
she's much more agile than Zach Ertz, to be honest. Wow, that was great explosiveness.
Yep. No, she tries to climb up here and scratch it all up, so I was about to get triggered.
I think the point is too, like, what was spent to get Khalil Herbert? Probably a 3rd round rookie pick at most, maybe even a 4th round rookie pick. So if you're just going to give up like a future 3rd or 4th for Zach Ertz, that seems fair. So to Zach's credit of it being a fair trade, to Jay's credit, it really does come down to contending rebuild. Because I think if you are rebuilding, Herbert probably gives better trade opportunities in the future. Whereas really, if you have Zach Ertz on a rebuild team and you want to flip him, you have to flip him in the first 6 weeks, because that's when the value, and like almost flip him now. And what are you trying to flip him for? You might try and flip him for like a backup running back like Herbert. So I could definitely see if you're rebuilding, contending, you might determine what side you'd want to be on here.
Can 100%. I get your guys' thought on a trade?
Sure.
I know I did not post this one in there, but I run a 16-team 1 QB PPR. Echo, there's a fly on the light, and she's swatting the shit out of it right now. All right. Anyway, sorry about that.
All right, never mind then. No, light's not nature.
I wish you could see this right now. She is in kill mode. I'm sorry if you start hearing chirping. That sounds like the predator. That's what happens usually when she sees a bug.
So menacing. Wow. Right to the predator. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, she's a Bengal for a reason. No, it's a 16-team 1 QB PPR. And the 16 team is probably the biggest part to emphasize, because it makes everything very limited in regards to that talent level. And so I had Patrick Mahomes, and I did not have any 23 first. I had a questionable RB2. It was Sony Michel. Which isn't necessarily a great spot to be in. And I ended up trading away Patrick Mahomes, and I want to see what you guys think in regards to, the trade I made to get him. Let me, if I can find the right tab. Sorry. It concerns me whenever I'm trading away Patrick, because you're realistically probably not getting a guy of the same quality in return, right? But here it was. I gave up Patrick Mahomes and Sony Michel, along with 225 fourths, a 25 third, and a 24 third. So just like late round. Yeah. And remember, 16 team doesn't matter. But I got Jared Goff. I know I just wanted another QB. I have the MILF Hunter as well. I'm high on him, so we're feeling good there. But then I also got a 223 first and a 25 first. Was that fair?
I think Superflex price on Mahomes is probably 3 firsts at a minimum, right? So that probably seems like that's.
This is 1 QB.
Yeah, so that's why I'm trying to kind of like scale that back. The picks are slightly less valued, so I don't know if he's quite worth 4 firsts. So I think it's in the range of fair. I guess because it's not Superflex, I wouldn't necessarily demand an overpay. Like a Superflex league, it's Mahomes. it's not even about the value. It's about, if it's super flex, I don't want to trade Mahomes unless I'm getting another elite quarterback back. That's kind of the main point. Like, I wouldn't, in a super flex league, I wouldn't go down from Mahomes to Goff. One QB where you can kind of pick the matchups between Goff and Wilson to start, you might be better off. So yeah, I think I wouldn't call it an underpay. Wouldn't call it an overpay by them by any stretch. So yeah, probably right in the fair range.
Because I'm in a weird spot with this team right now. I mean, I've got a lot of young wide receivers. I mean, my wide receiver core is Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf, Christian Watson, Dubs, Danny Gray, and then Ridley. But and then CMC is the only other guy of note. Obviously, I had Mahomes too, but I looked at it where if I have Watson and Dubs as my two flex guys, and I have Sony Michel as my RB2, unless I'm getting the best weeks possible from Jamar and Christian, which, I mean, they do produce often like that, but you don't want to rely solely on that. I flipped it into first round picks thinking, hey, maybe I can use this to turn around and get older guys that could produce for me in the immediate future, or I can sell Christian McCaffrey. And which way would you consider?
And to be fair, getting picks like that gives you that flexibility. You can decide either lane. Like, trade away a player and acquiring first doesn't mean you're giving up on contending, because those first, again, can be used to trade for players with more certainty. Who's producing, who's the bad defenses, and you can kind of plan a few weeks in advance once you're in the season. So that the picks do give the flexibility there. So
yeah, it's
getting three firsts for Mahomes. Yeah. I think, in a single quarterback league, I think that's probably what I would do. Yeah, I think I'd pick that side as well.
It's painful to trade him. It is. After taking him in the startup a couple years ago, it hurts my soul, but I'm like, I can't write out Sony Michel and then TDP as my RB2 options all year. Like, I think that's asking for, I know you think you have Sony projected for a few touchdowns leading that running back room, but still not a guy I feel like should really be a RB2 consistently if you're trying to be a contender.
Yeah, he probably won't get. I mean, it's funny because I'm shocked that I think 3 different instances in his career he's gotten 200 carries, which includes last year with the Rams, to be honest. So even recent history, but yeah, I don't think he's going to get 200 carries with the Dolphins. So yeah, I don't think the volume will necessarily be there. Jay, I did want to go back to one of your trades. I know you had a couple trades involving Devontae Smith, and now, were you involved in either of these trades, or these, again, just trades you saw in your leagues?
The first one, the Devontae Smith and DeAndre Swift, I traded away.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd like to just get your thoughts on that. Like, what was your thinking to trade away those 2 young assets?
This is a complete rebuild for me. So I traded away Devontae Smith and DeAndre Swift for Damian Harris, Treylon Burks, Breece Hall, and a 23 first, which is probably going to be a later first, a 110, somewhere in that range, 110, 111. Let me get over. Oh, shoot, if I can find the team here.
I'm looking at this already. If you said it's a rebuild, because I mean, I would be thrilled if I got Swift and Smith in the same package in any league. But at the same time, for you, if you have a lot of different holes you're trying to fill, I mean, Damian Harris is a guy I'm probably going to try and flip to someone trying to compete, where I can get more assets to help me in this rebuild. Treylon Burks, Breece Hall are great pieces to have in there, and obviously they're rookies, so feeling good there. And, maybe, are there any teams that are towards the bottom that realistically are maybe like a running back away from being good?
There's probably two or three of them.
Or at least could convince themselves. Because I would look for the guy that thinks, oh, Damian Harris would put me into the hunt. But you're looking at his team like, probably won't. Maybe you could use Damian Harris in that first to try and move up in the draft.
Right. And the other side of that coin is I also have Ramondre Stevenson and Michael Carter on that same team. So
you've just gotten 2 handcuffs, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
And I think, so a running back, wide receiver. So just saying DeAndre Swift and Devontae Smith for Treylon Burks and Breece Hall is probably pretty close. Like even though he hasn't played in the NFL yet, it seems like Breece Hall is valued as a top 5 RB in Dynasty. So his value relative to Swift is probably not that different. I think it still favors Swift slightly. And then Burks to Smith it might be the same thing where you might the guy that's already played, but even then it's just a slight boost. And not enough in both instances where the 23 first I think would make the difference. So that to me you're just basically getting Damian Harris thrown into this trade for free without paying for it. So I think this is actually a great value for you to get a 4 for 2. 12 team super flex. I'm assuming it's probably start 10, so nothing outlandish. If it was like start 12, start 13, you do as many 4 for 2s, getting the multiple picks, or 3 for 2s, getting the more quantity necessarily over quality. But you're also getting good quality assets, I think, especially with Breece Hall at 23 first. So I love this trade for you, Jay.
And I'm high on all the guys involved in this trade outside of, or I should say at least on the end you sent away, and then also including Breece Hall. I'm not as high on Burks or Harris, but value wise, you got a great deal where even if, for example, you feel like me where you're not the highest on Treylon Burks, he's a name where you can easily sell him. Like say there's another rookie you like, or you just are like, hey, I don't expect to compete this year. I'll sell him, and then you can get a lot more. Because I mean, I love the 23 draft class where if you have a lot of holes you're trying to fill, I would have no issue stacking up.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that Harris is going to be one of those ones. If I can get 2, possibly 3 good, solid weeks out of him, I can flip him pretty easy.
So I did just want to end with one last trade before we get out of here real quick, because we are approaching the 1 hour and a half, and I wanted to kind of leave us with a boom. So big trade I made back in the rookie draft. So involved in this trade was the 104, 223 first, and a 23 second on one side. So 4 picks for 2 players, Justin Jefferson and Evan Ingram. And the 104 eventually turned out to be Drake London.
Give me what were all the picks again?
So 104, 223 firsts, and a 23 second. 12 team super flex, start 10, probably pretty similar to the league Jay was just talking about.
Okay. And you got Drake London, and then that's tough. I mean, you always want the best guy, but when it's that many picks, I'm not married to Justin Jefferson. I mean, it's tough. And it depends too. For me, I'm not sure if you operate this way at all, but sometimes if I draft a guy and I'm higher on him than everyone else early, and his stock skyrockets, there's a lot more emotional attachment where it's hard to even really consider, whatever that reasonable haul would be. Like for example, Jamar Chase. Whenever people hit me up in my leagues where I was sending smoke screens so he'd fall to me, I just tell them like, Jamar Chase will die on my team. Like, no, don't ask. But I also, if you're getting a haul like that, it's tough to argue against, especially based on team situation, where if you have a lot of other things you want to address, it's tough to argue with it. I mean, I think is that an overpay?
Well, I would say I think I overpaid for Jefferson. I think 3 first is maybe, I wouldn't say mass overpay, but for guys like Chase and Jefferson, it seems like they're the only non-quarterbacks in the Superflex leagues that are going to be worth multiple firsts like that. Is 3 first? That's maybe something that's maybe reserved for the elite quarterbacks, but I also think Jefferson and Chase are first-round startup picks, even in a Superflex league like this. So kind of close, similar, comparable value to those elite quarterbacks. And I didn't have a Chase or Jefferson share. So this was a targeted league where I had the ammunition, had the extra first next year, and felt like this is a team that has made the playoffs 3 years in a row, but also hasn't done anything in the playoffs. So also needing that boost, that next level. I didn't think Drake London was necessarily going to provide that as a rookie. So,
and do you have depth everywhere and just kind of trying to supplement and like slightly increase the production at the top?
I would say wide receiver depth was actually a big issue for me, and so this season has been to try and acquire that depth. And so part of that is Justin Jefferson definitely adds to that room. A separate trade I acquired Marquise Brown. Another trade I acquired Curtis Samuel for Naeem Hines. So just trying to convert the running backs into wide receivers. So Just
No, I like it for you then. I think it's an expensive price to pay, but if you're trying to take your team over the top to go to that next level, I get trades like that. I mean, I overpaid for Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago, uh, trying to do the same thing right before he got injured.
Well, quick
And I mean,
question.
but what's up?
I'm sorry, I have a quick question, real quick. The 223 first. I'm assuming one of them were yours,
Yes.
and then the other one was
It's
from
actually the manager who traded me Jefferson. Getting his own first
a.
back. So that's maybe the first that, again, him trading away Jefferson. Their team's signaling rebuild. Though it's funny that Justin Jefferson is not necessarily someone you give away because you're in a rebuild, but I think that's the kind of taking away from their team. So that's the first that maybe does risk being early. I'd like to
Right.
think mine will be close to the 212 or the 112.
Right. So you're giving 104, which turned out to be London. So you're giving London and probably a top 3 and then a back end for Jefferson. I don't think that's an overpay at all.
No, and I think what I always try and do too, it's easy to just look at them as picks, and I know we all say like until there's a name to it, you really don't know on its value. But when I'm negotiating with someone, when I'm trying to, we're doing these PLPs or we're doing subjects like this and we're trying to evaluate the draft picks, I try and put names in my mind for where I think they might be going in those draft classes. When we were talking about the 24 first or something, I'm thinking like if it's a back end or a middle of the first, like Xavier Worthy, like, okay, how do I think he produces? Obviously, there's a lot of variables before now and then, but trying to put a name to it where in this package, whatever I think that guy could be at the NFL level, how does that compare with these other pieces to what I'm sending? And I think that's where it's tough, even if you're high on Drake London, even if there's some other good guys coming back in return. Justin Jefferson's an elite company, and he's so damn young too. Where if you needed that to take you over the top, that's a great piece to acquire for that. You could have gone with a more veteran guy for cheaper, but you just shored up what you needed at that position for a long time to come. So I love it.
And it seems like with Jefferson, he's got a lot of insulation. Like unlike say not to pour on you, but with McCaffrey, you're paying for that elite production points wise, but with a short span. Whereas this Jefferson's attempt to get both, right? Get the elite production. Maybe he's even the wide receiver 1 this year, but also this is the start of what we think is a long career. We'll go with one last, question topic here from Jamie before we head out. So, mentioned that he took over an orphan on a team that had Tebow and Dwayne Haskins. Now, it's funny because he mentions the 2008 Florida Gators. So I almost thought, okay, did you take over this team in 2008? But then I realized, taking over this team now. And, I mean, Haskins, unfortunately just passed away this year. So I, could understand, okay, an orphan team where he'd still be on there. But yeah, why is Tim Tebow on a team? He hasn't played an NFL game since 2013, his last NFL game
with the Jets.
So much longer than Josh Gordon. We've talked about Josh Gordon seems, but he's at least played recently. So that's a little inexcusable to have Tebow roster on any dynasty startup that started in the last 5 years. But yeah, so just, I guess JD's mentioning that there were 7 vacant bench spots, 1 player on the taxes. This team had really a lot of details have been left. A lot of could be done with it, which is but a lot hadn't been done. So made 11 solid trades and then named my team the 2008 Florida Gators. So I guess that's Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow, Aaron Hernandez era, right? 2008 Florida.
2008, yeah. Percy Harvin.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess those are pretty good teams then, weren't they?
They had a few killers on that team.
It was a national championship team. Yes, it was.
No,
so yeah. So hope Jamie wins the national championship then.
Have you guys one question? Have you guys actually taken over orphan teams that are in good situations? Because I kind of had my first one this year where the league winner went MIA, and he clearly had the best dynasty roster, and I somehow just happened to be the person they asked to come take it over, and suddenly I've got the best team in this new league of mine.
Great job! Great way to.
Is that something you guys have experienced? Because I've never really seen the competitors really open up. I think those are the guys that are most likely to stay.
Yeah, that's why they call it an orphan.
I mean,
This was
I think you might see that where someone just, they don't want to necessarily be in the league anymore. That like they're cutting back. I could see things like that where someone, even if they have a good team, the time investment just doesn't make it worth it. But yeah, for a lot of casual leagues where it's only it's people with a few teams, they don't necessarily see the good teams getting abandoned. Maybe something like, not to rip on safe leagues, but it seems like there's been kind of a mass exodus on safe leagues the last couple of years just because of like limitations on the formats. You have to pay. If you acquire a future first and then trade it away, you have to pay your own fees, even though it's not your own first. And it seems like that caused a lot of people to, okay, I'm picking this is my last year and doing it, and then leaving even good teams. So I hear a lot of people doing that, but that's again for like specific reasons. Again, limitations with formats because of that, not enough trade activity, not really wanting it for dynasty. So I could see like it would. I don't think yours is the only exception to the only good team that'll be left as an orphan. But to Jay's credit, I think that most orphans are probably not going to be in the best shape.
And I guess you make a good point because I mean, there's even a few leagues like that I'm in where, I don't know if I trust that they'll survive long term. And those are the leagues where I'm always just win now, win now, win now. Like if I don't think it'll last, why does it matter? But
yeah, pick your rebuilds well, right? Like pick the leagues you think are healthy, good commissioners, good amounts of people, not a lot of turnover year to year. I mean, if the manager gets replaced every year, that's fine. I don't think you don't necessarily want 3 or 4 managers getting replaced every year, although maybe makes more dispersal fun happening. But yeah,
we did one C2C league that I just got into this year. They moved it from one platform over to Sleeper for the NFL side, and then kept Fantrax for the college side. The couple people did not want to move to Sleeper, so opened up. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 teams. And for a C2C, the way they did it was basically the 3 new managers coming in. You got put in an order, and you got to pick whether you wanted the college team or the NFL team. So basically,
of each season, so you could divide the teams into like almost have 6 separate entities that you could choose from. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
and it made it fun for the 3 new managers coming in, which I was one of. Of course, I took the college side because, I'm building my NFL side. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So I can see where Zach's coming from. Somebody just did not want to swap over to the Sleeper platform, so they were like, you know what, screw it, I'm done.
And that would be much quicker than a full dispersal of those teams as well. So maybe also the time aspect is, okay, there's only 6 choices to make. You're really 5 because the last person just gets the last whatever's left. So that's interesting. That's a really good way to kind of do a dispersal in a time sensitive manner.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I really want to thank and appreciate greatly both Zach and Jay for joining here on the Dynasty Gambit. So you guys take some time to plug anything you want, articles, any other content, and your Twitter handles. So Jay, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't write any articles, so you can find me over on Twitter at FantasyJ77. I'm in the Discord with a couple different spots, but in going for 2, I'm in the Discord all the time. So hit me up there. You can DM me on Twitter or in the Discord. I'm around.
Oh, and you can find me on Twitter at the Big Pulowski. I'm bouncing all over going for 2 network. 2-point conversion on Monday, fantasy cheat sheet on Tuesdays, and then starting during the season every Sunday morning, I'll be doing a show with Gladys and Gerson as well. And then other than that, I'm also starting up my own show, The Ballmanac. And that's only got 1 episode up so far, but I've been planning some interviews with some guys I used to work with in baseball. So hopefully I'll be getting on some MLB guys here pretty quick.
Yeah, so much great content. So Ballmanac, fantasy cheat sheet. I was going to say press coverage, but that is next Monday press coverage happening. But yeah, 2-point conversion. But yes, I'll be hosting press coverage next Monday, 8:30 or 8 p.m. Eastern. Courtney Harden's coming on, a longtime associate we've had at Going for 2. So looking forward to that conversation with Courtney. We'll be back in 2 weeks on the Dynasty Gambit. I think, although I still have to confirm this with both my co-hosts, Devin and Brian, but I think what we'll be talking about on that episode, which will be I guess August 18th, we'll be talking about dynasty buys, just knowing that, okay, yes, we were talking trades today, but I think tomorrow is really focusing on who are the players we want to go buy before the season. Who do we feel like could spike early in the season to where their price will spike quickly, so you want to get ahead of that and buy them. I think that's going to be kind of the premise of the next episode. Kind of goes with the dynasty sell episode that we did back earlier in the offseason. I want to kind of separate them, knowing that back then, June, end of May, June, whatever it was, that was the time to sell. Acquire as many picks as possible, as we've talked about through this episode. Be flexible, liquidate, so that you can, when it's time to go purchase players, you've got all the currency to be able to do that. When it's time sensitive, matchups being set in a few days, or your lineups having to be set, and that's this is kind of starting to get to that time where you want to go signal out those players you want to buy. So we'll be doing that 2 weeks from now in the Dynasty Gambit. But again, check out everything on the Going for Two Live Network. Subscribe, like the video, and again, comment if you're watching this after the fact and not live. We really appreciate all that support. It really helps us out. And again, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Zach. Any final words for our viewers and listeners?
Go Arsenal. Opening game, Premier League tomorrow, Crystal Palace. Let's go.
I can't follow that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I was gonna say I'm gonna get head out of here and see if the CFL game is still on. See if I can catch the fourth quarter. But on behalf of Zach, on behalf of Jay, I'm Kyle Senra.
They are talking about the Arsenal game right now at halftime.
Good.
Zach's watching TV. He's not even paying attention.
I got the jersey on too. I'm ready.
That's true. I was gonna say Arsenal's red, right? Yeah, that seems like that's.
Yeah, I got the.
Oh, yeah, there's the sponsor. Yeah, you gotta have those on soccer jerseys. Just kidding. It's coming to all your sports jerseys soon, I assume. But again, coming to all your platforms is the Dynasty Gambit. As mentioned, we'll be back in 2 weeks. So thank you, Jay. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, all the listeners and viewers, for this episode of the Dynasty Gambit. I'm Kyle Senra. Goodbye for now.